周日長談深入時事話題。上個禮拜我哋為各位請嘅貴賓咧係艾文信先生。我哋傾嘅兩個問題都係當前係好熱門嘅問題，我哋得到嘅反應係非常之強烈，亦都好多人希望能夠請艾文信先生嚟同我哋再繼續傾下其他啲衝突性好大，但係始終揾唔到答案嘅一啲問題。所以我哋今日咧再一次請到艾文信先生 ，Mr. David Emerson. Thank you for coming again to our show. We have very heated discussions among our audience from the new perspectives that you have provided us on all the from the privatization of healthcare systems and the real estate hot market. So thank you for coming back, and we will talk about another two very hot issues. Pipelines, economic development and environmental development. Do we need to be so extreme in this too? Are there any middle way that we can find problems? Because right now, everything is stuck in the middle and nothing is moving on.
Absolutely no reason why we should not be building pipelines. In fact, the quality of our standard of living, the public services we enjoy, if we don't allow energy products to get to market, if we don't allow mines to be built, if we don't allow ports and airports to expand, we are going to basically undermine our ability to provide opportunities for the kids and a standard of living for Canadians. And so pipelines, when you look at pipelines, because I've just done a review of transportation for the Government of Canada, pipelines are by far the safest way to transport oil from A to B. Right now, a lot of it is going by rail, which is not as safe. It's not as cost effective. And we are allowing pipelines to go into processes where ostensibly the reviewing bodies are looking at facts and looking at science and looking at environmental impacts and looking at implications for First Nations. They produce reports, but that still is not good enough. What people are looking for is what has been called social license. And so instead of a license which is based on facts and analysis and hearings and as much information as you can assemble, it's some vague term that really involves kind of the political atmospherics of it, and the political atmospherics are driven by special interest groups who don't really feel compelled to provide scientific perspectives at all times, and there's no challenge function to determine who is telling the truth and who is not. And so an awful lot of the fundamental wealth creation that we rely on as a country for us and our kids and our grandkids is really being stopped, unnecessarily.
Well, of course, we are not going back to the lip the manifesto, which is really an extreme of stopping all kind of energy projects. Right. Any natural resources should stop. That is totally extreme. Yeah. But from how do you look at their wish list of protecting the environment and start slowing down the development of diesels, petrol chemicals releasing in the air? Is that a legitimate, from your point of view, a legitimate concern, and how does our convention of economic development can address that issue?
I think review processes and governments should be very vigorous and rigorous in terms of reviewing industrial footprints for environmental issues, reviewing and ensuring that people in the adjacent communities, First Nations in particular, are able to benefit from the resource. All of that is good. What I think is not good is actually putting blocks in the road, or a blockade in the road to stop development completely. If you want people to consume less in terms of carbon fuels, don't go and beat on the oil sands individually. Put a carbon tax in, make it universal. People pay when they gas up their car, they pay when they heat their house. But instead, we've got people who have turned it into a little bit of a tribal attack on particular industries, which translates then into particular communities and particular provinces. And it's not really driven by fact, and it's not driven by good, effective public policy. You've got to be broad-based. I saw it when I was in the forest industry. We used to get, severe attacks from environmentalists about our forest management practices. But in my time, I have to say that the people who worked in the forest products company that I was involved in were stronger environmentalists, more practical, because they made a living in the woods, they went fishing on the weekends. They were basically people who really wanted to see preservation of the forests and the fish stocks, and wanted responsible treatment of the environment. And yet we had outside groups who were chaining themselves to Home Depot's retail aisles because they didn't like somebody's forest practices, and it was not about the facts on the ground.
So is it hopeless to expect that the two sides can actually come up with a consensus or understanding?
Well, I think this kind of feeds into the evolution of politics, because politics today has become so tribal and so driven by symbolism and people who have preconceived interests and ideas about the world and how the world should evolve, that we've got tribes that are warring with each other, and they're not looking for common solutions. They're not looking at the broad-based public interest. And if we're ever going to change it, in my view, we need the kinds of people to go into politics who will go into it and accept that the role of a politician is to lead. That means you've got to take unpopular positions if they are right, if they're scientifically and factually grounded, if they're socially responsible, but they may be publicly very unpopular, and we need more people in politics and public life who will take these issues on from the point of view of problem solving, not simply waging the tribal warfare that seems to go on between political parties, amongst different special interest groups in the economy. And now,
We're stuck in the middle.
You see it manifest itself in Trumpism, for example, in the U.S. He's heading up a tribe now that has certain preconceived notions that may have nothing to do with what's actually factual on the ground.
I was actually waiting to ask you this question about this tribal, about politics at the end, but you can help but jump right in. But I think that's really the pink elephant that is in the room in many discussions, because it seems, I'm in politics before too, but it seems that to me is that finding the solution will be the end of their political life.
Yeah.
They nurture on the problems.
Yeah.
And as long as the problems always exist, they have their profession secured. I hope I'm not too cynical on this one.
No, and in many cases, the problems are almost manufactured symbolically. There is a rhetoric around certain issues that really may not even match the facts and the true problems that are out there. And if you're always just fighting over symbols, you're never going to get to the hard work of finding out the detailed ways of getting at understanding what's going on, why it's happening, and what you can do to change it. But that's hard work. And for people to go into politics and say, I feel that the country's going in the wrong direction, there needs to be, some leadership in this area or that area, you need people who are who know enough about these things, who are professionally trained in many cases, who are committed, who are willing to go in and do the job, get it done, and get out.
I cannot agree more with you, particularly on not always read, not doing everything so that you will get reelected.
Right.
Yep. So now talking about, let's go back to another issue that is really a huge, everything is a symbol. And that symbol is the same. For the children, for the parents, what happens with our educational system, particularly in British Columbia, and it happens in other provinces too. The teachers and the government is always fighting, and the parents and the students can expect a strike or interruption of their life and education anytime. What is the pink elephant in that room?
I think education is another one where, you know, in my judgment, and I've actually been doing a fair amount of reading since I've retired from business and public life, there are better approaches to education. Finland is a good example. In Finland, teaching is a high prestige profession. It's hard to get into. You cannot teach unless you have a professional degree. They pay teachers very well in Finland. They don't stream. They give attention to pupils in terms of making sure all of them, no matter where they come from or what their skill level, are given enough care and attention to rise together. And so you've got a very, very successful school system in a country like Finland. And here in North America and in BC, I think we've got this in spades. We've got the two sides that are just going at each other. And again, there's a bit of tribalism involved. We all know that you need to make sure that there is power to ensure that teachers are treated well as employees. We need to ensure that the kids are taken care of, that the public interest is being served, and we need to ensure that money going into the system is actually being used for purposes of building a stronger system for the kids of the future. And I think that the tribal warfare is actually just resulting in everybody talking past each other because they're spouting the symbolic language of their tribe, and they're not getting down to the sort of the nuts and bolts of solving better education for children. And as you know, the private schools are taking advantage of it because they have enough freedom, and they can cherry pick people with money to run private schools, and it's hurting the public school system in a real sense.
So really, the down to the bottom line is policy versus politics, and people should be sitting down talking about politics. But I think I hope I'm not too pessimistic about this, but I really don't think that I can see this happen too soon.
No.
Yeah.
And to me, for me personally, I'm real happy to pay teachers who are good teachers, who are committed teachers, who are passing knowledge and curiosity and the ability to kind of learn and do research and study to the kids. Pay them well, give them prestige. Don't make it a last choice of career options when you go to university. Make it a first choice. Encourage them and give them the kind of prestige in the community that would attract the best and brightest to become teachers, because they really, truly are the foundation on which our future is going to be built. Because if you don't have good teachers, the kids are going to float away.
Let's take a break and we'll come back and continue to talk about that pink elephant in the classrooms. 我哋休息一陣，一陣間繼續再談我哋嘅教育問題。